Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a shifting allegiance among the MAGA base, an election shakeup, and a presidential 180 on releasing the Epstein files. We talk about it all with Executive Director of the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, Rick Mullaney. Later in the program, surfer scientist Bill Longenecker. He tells us why, after 40 years of delivering daily surf reports, he's still teaching locals about beach conditions. But first, we are joined now by a man we rely on periodically to help make sense of the political world. Rick Mullaney, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
So we should say you are the executive director of the Jacksonville University Haskell Public Policy Institute. Yes. You are also a former general counsel for the city of Jacksonville. You're an attorney. You're a man that wears many, many hats. Thanks for being here today.
Always great to be with you, Ann.
There's much to talk about.
There is, and there always is, it seems.
There always will be. So let's start with the shutdown, because while that has resolved, we know that there are still people out there who are feeling the repercussions, whether it's people who are still waiting for SNAP benefits to be, kind of brought up to date. We know that there are people that are still going to be missing paychecks, even though the government has resumed that there are still people who are out, a couple of pay cycles. So this is continuing to cause pain for the electorate.
It is. And
what about the political people who caused it to happen?
Well, and also flights haven't gotten back to normal, too.
Yeah.
I hope one of the takeaways maybe from the shutdown is, I doubt we'll learn this lesson, but I hope we do, is that shutdowns really aren't good for the country. If you go back and take a look, they started in 1980 with an opinion from the Department of Justice, from the Attorney General, that said that you had to cut off the funding when you didn't have an appropriation like this. And since 1980, we've had about 15 of these. But only a few have gone beyond 4 days. And this was the longest in history at 43 days. The second longest in 2019, when Donald Trump was president, was 35 days. You had one with Barack Obama that went for 16 days, one with Bill Clinton for 21 days. And generally speaking, and this is a good example, they come at a cost. They inflict great pain. And typically what's happened is a party in the minority wants to use the filibuster and their leverage to obtain a policy objective. In this shutdown, of course, it was about health care. And you can make really strong, compelling arguments on the importance of health care and the challenges we're facing. But in the context of a shutdown, the question is this the way to do that? In 2019, it was a question of a border wall. That's why the Republicans had a shutdown. So I do think one of the great takeaways is we should step back and recognize it's not good for the country. It's not good public policy. And I hope we won't have shutdowns in the future, but likely we will. And what will happen is Republicans and Democrats will simply switch jerseys as to whose fault it is. But in your question about the fallout from it, there certainly is a disagreement among the Democrats as to what this shutdown accomplished. Among progressives, they're upset and angry, and they feel nothing was accomplished. Among the more moderates, they go, several policy objectives were accomplished. You mentioned SNAP benefits being put back into place. In Virginia, with 350,000 federal workers, Senator Tim Kaine points to those who were fired being hired back, those getting furloughed, paychecks. And of course, maybe the most significant thing in the view of the moderates was the vote in December on the extension of the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, those enhanced subsidies that were put in place during COVID and that were set to expire at the end of this year. So in the end, progressives feel you didn't get anything. The more moderate Democrats feel you got a lot. I tend to think that a little bit was gained, but at a very high cost. And so as we look forward, really important to keep an eye on what happens on that December vote on the Affordable Care Act subsidies. But all of this is with an eye towards next November, towards the midterms.
Well, so first of all, I want to ask you, historically, have shutdowns wrought what the agent of the shutdown wanted? I mean, that's kind of question one. And then, because in this case, the Democrats, even though they got some small concessions, they didn't get what they were going for in terms of extension, that guarantee of extension of the healthcare subsidies. So they didn't get what they wanted. And I don't know if that is par for the course, but also typically, is there any rule in terms of who benefits in the next election cycle? Is there any standard in terms of which side was behind the shutdown and then which side ultimately kind of paid the price in the next election cycle?
History suggests that they're not successful. that the parties don't get their policy objectives. You didn't see the shutdown successful in 2019 to get the border wall in that case. In 2013 with Barack Obama, that was about the Affordable Care Act, the attempt to derail it. With Clinton, it was about government spending. This time it was about health care. So the answer to your first question is historically they've been very unsuccessful. But historically they've always come at a high price. Remember that high price, at first it starts off with federal workers, and most of the country isn't quite as sensitive to federal workers until it begins to affect them, when it affects them with flights, when it begins to affect them with benefits, and it affects the GDP. And so they do have really bad consequences for the country. In answer to your second question, it can sometimes be very damaging to the party. That was the case in 2013 when Ted Cruz was the leader of the Affordable Care Act, really that kind of shutdown, and it really hurt the Republican Party. So the answer to that is it varies over time. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case this time. I don't think necessarily the Democrats are going to be on the far end of this. In fact, what they've done is they have elevated front and center the healthcare issue. And right now, with open enrollment around the country and people are looking at these premiums, I've got bad news for the Republicans. Although 20 million people may be affected by those enhanced subsidies that they're seeking an extension for, millions and millions of Americans are now seeing that their premiums are going up unrelated to that. And there is an affordability crisis and a healthcare crisis for everyday Americans. And that is going to be front and center for the midterm elections.
This is somewhat different than previous shutdowns, and I don't want to go on and on about the shutdown, which is over, but it seems that previous ones weren't by the party that had zero power. That it was more, so for the Trump shutdown, that was something that the Trump administration was angling for.
Typically what happens is you don't have the 60 votes in the Senate, and that is the problem. And either way, whether you're the minority or whether you're in the majority, and therefore you're able to hold it up because of that. And that's typically where it is. It's not in the House. It's in the Senate. Right. And that raises the filibuster. And you can see one of the solutions this time was Donald Trump suggesting abolishing the filibuster. And what you have begun to see in a couple different areas is Republicans beginning to push back a little bit. And this is one area where they did push back, and they simply said they're not going to abolish the filibuster.
I want to talk about that as well, because one of the topics that, of course, is on everybody's mind, especially today, is the Epstein files.
Yes.
And that is another area where there's been some visible rifts in the MAGA base. So, you're talking about this one area of pushback on the filibuster, but there have been a few areas, and this is probably the most high profile.
This is a second area when there's been a fracture in this. Donald Trump has certainly been, with the Republicans, has gotten his way on virtually everything, but you're beginning to see a little thawing in that. The filibuster is one example. And maybe, as you just said, a more prominent example is the Epstein files among the MAGA base and among some of his biggest supporters in the past who have really departed with him on this issue, and they want those files released. This is another example, kind of like shutdowns, where it tends to be viewed through a partisan lens. Right now, the Trump administration is getting a lot of criticism for not releasing the files. But these exact same files, when they were in possession of the Biden administration, it was the Republicans who were criticizing Biden for not releasing the files. And so when it comes to gerrymandering, when it comes to the Epstein files, when it comes to the shutdown, the Republicans and Democrats simply switch sides of the field sometimes, like at halftime, and they're each taking each other's side. And what's missing, quite frankly, oftentimes, is what's in the country's best interest. The gerrymandering example, for example, each side seeking political advantage through gerrymandering, each side using a shutdown for their policy objective, each side, for whatever reason, I'm mystified sometimes as to why, on the Epstein files, there's a legitimate concern about harming innocent people here that shouldn't be underweighed in terms of people's character. But there's also the concern for transparency and opening up these files. But your main point is a very good one, and this is in which the MAGA base has clearly gone in a different direction than Donald Trump, and he put a great deal of pressure on some of his supporters and the base on the Epstein files. He came up short, and when he did, that's why he has now changed his position to...
To your point, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, he's a Republican, has been one of the leading voices on, leading this petition to release the documents. And he was asked about this last week. Let's take a listen to what he had to say, and then we'll ask about it.
The deal for Republicans on this vote is that Trump will protect you if you vote the wrong way. In other words, if you vote to cover up for pedophiles, you've got cover in a Republican primary. But I would remind my colleagues that this vote is going to be on your record for longer than Trump is going to be president. And what are you going to do in 2028 and 2030 when you're in a debate, either with a Republican or a Democrat, and they say, how can we trust you? You covered up for a pedophile.
So I want to ask you, I mean, obviously he's appealing to people to this very visceral issue, saying this is going to stick, but it also opens the door in a strange way to like life beyond Trump, which is not something you hear lawmakers talk about too much. He'll be gone one day and he won't be there to protect you.
You're going to see that conversation increase as time goes on because he officially will be a lame duck come after next November. And more you're going to hear that conversation. But what he was trying to do there, of course, is he wanted to get votes and he wanted to get a veto-proof bill passed in the House. He thought he already had 100 people voting with him. What he said is a little bit moot now that the president has said, go ahead and vote for this. I think you're going to see some large numbers of coasts voting for it. What's interesting about it is that you don't really need a vote. The president could just release the files right now.
Right. Well,
He could simply just do it.
I mean, so what is happening here? The House is going to vote, then it's up to the Senate. If it goes
That's
to the
correct.
president, he says he'll sign it. But if he wanted to do it, he could do it now.
That's correct. All that's true. I can't explain it. But
Okay.
That's true. What you just described is accurate, but I can't explain it.
Okay. If you're just joining us, we were talking to Rick Mullaney about the latest political headlines. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937 or go to firstcoastconnect.org. You can find all the ways you can connect with us there. We've got a call from Eric in Arlington. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the interest of full disclosure, I'd like to ask a couple of questions, then I'll hang up. My first question would be, is Mr. Mullaney a registered Republican? Who did he vote for? Does he believe that the $3 trillion that we just gave to the 1%, that the Republicans just gave to the 1%, is the right way to go in the form of tax cuts? And as far as Epstein goes, does he really believe that the reason that Donald Trump hasn't released the Epstein files is because of something other than the fact that Donald Trump is in them all over the place? And all I'm hearing here this morning from him is whataboutism. I don't understand why the Democrats and Republicans are behaving the way they do. I mean, that's just like a talking point, a ridiculous talking point. You're supposed to be an analyst that's, making these things clear to people, and for some reason you're just obfuscating. And so,
Well, Eric, thanks for your input. I mean,
I appreciate his comment, but I think maybe I didn't explain my point very well. It wasn't about making excuses. It's trying to make a very real point that Republicans and Democrats are to blame for shutdowns. They're both at fault. And unfortunately, in this partisan environment we're in, where the partisan divide has gotten so strong, that when the Democrats have a shutdown, the Democrats support it. When Republicans have a shutdown, they support it. I'm giving you a very different notion, that they're both just playing politics, and it's not in the best interest of the country. On Epstein, I was trying to make a very similar point, that when the documents were in control of the Biden administration, it was the Republicans that were critical. Now that it's in control of the Trump administration, it's the Democrats that are critical.
and either president
And,
at any point could have
And by the way,
released them.
and this is true too on other topics in which both parties are partisan. So if that's not a whataboutism, I would say, what about the Democrats? What about the Republicans? I'm suggesting something different. It's not about a red jersey or a blue jersey, as some would say. It's about a red, white, and blue jersey. How about let's being objective about all of it? On his second point about Epstein, I don't know. There's something we don't know when it comes to those files for why the president has been so adamant in not wanting their release. And I was not suggesting, for example, that was his primary motivation when I said I was simply about whether or not innocent people would be damaged. That's always, as a former prosecutor, I was always very concerned about that. I don't think that for a second. With regard to his first question, actually, I'm with a nonpartisan institute, the Haskell Public Policy Institute. We do the best we can to call balls and strikes as best we can when it comes to public policy. But I do appreciate his call because it points out that partisan lens. And that is typically, and I see it everywhere with groups and large groups, is if you do it through a red lens, it's one way. If you do it through a blue lens, it's another. What I'm really arguing for is something different, an attempt to call balls and strikes. For example, Letitia James ran for office and that she was going to get Donald Trump. I happen to think that's wrong.
Like campaigned on that.
Donald Trump tells Pam Bondi to go after his political enemies. He's talking about Adam Schiff, and he's talking about James Comey, which is now in trouble. I think that's wrong, too. Now, the caller may think that's whataboutism. What I'm really calling for is, how about let's being consistent? How about let's being objective? How about when Donald Trump does something well, we say so. When he does something not well, let's say so, too. When Joe Biden did something right, let's acknowledge that. When he did something wrong, let's acknowledge that. But in my experience, I think it's very hard in the current environment to recognize that there are times when you may be very supportive, for example, of Donald Trump securing the border, but you might not be as supportive of his approach on tariffs. And so it becomes a big public policy question. And these are difficult. But in the recent shutdown, I don't believe that. I think damage was inflicted on the country. It moved the needle a little bit for Democrats, but generally speaking, shutdowns are not in the best interest of the country.
Do you think that there is a larger scale alignment or realignment going on within the base of the president? We know that, he was trying to get some of these petition signers, people like Lauren Boebert, to change their mind, or at least that's what's been reported, that there was kind of these meetings in the Situation Room. Now, obviously, as you say, he kind of saw where things were going and I think said, well, I'm going to throw in with the winners here. There's no winning.
Yeah. I'm not so sure it's significant, but I'm not so sure it's as big a fracture as some might think it is.
Mhm.
He still enjoys profound support with his MAGA base. I do think there's a fracture in both parties, and you can certainly see it on the Democratic side, the progressive wing versus the more moderate wing, and you can see that with the elections in Seattle and New York. But on the Republican side, this has clearly been the party of Donald Trump, not the party of Ronald Reagan for a while. As he likes to say, the president likes to say, he created MAGA, and so he defines MAGA. There are fractures that you can see. I just don't know if they're quite as significant as you might think.
Yeah. So if these are released, I mean, I guess that's the next question is there's going to be this vote, then it goes to the Senate, then it goes to the president. But ultimately, I mean, we don't know, the documents in the possession of the Justice Department essentially are in the possession of the president. And we know that this is a president that has previously been prosecuted for doing things with documents that he wasn't allowed to do, confidential, documents that were, found to be taken to his spot in Mar-a-Lago. Is there any reason that we should be confident about just the chain of custody of these documents?
I'm not so sure about the concern over chain of custody of the documents, but a concern has been raised by some that with the president's directive to the attorney general to investigate some of his Democratic opponents on this topic, that some of the documents may be considered part of the investigation.
It's an ongoing investigation.
And therefore, possibly they might not. That has been raised by some.
Sure.
I think from a political standpoint, of course, I do not know what's in the Epstein files, and I certainly think the caller calling in had a really good point. There's something there he doesn't want out. I don't know what it is, but there is something he feels very strongly about. But politically, for him to say go ahead and release was the right way to go because it was going to happen anyway. As a judge I used to practice in front of used to say, he says, do graciously that which you must do otherwise. He was going to have to do it. And so I think he graciously got on the side of where the winning vote would be.
That's a great line. We have an email from Corey. He says, do you think that Donald Trump will walk away from politics even after his term is up? Even if he doesn't try to run, I have a hard time believing he will step away the way previous presidents have. So his political cover may have longer legs than 2026.
Well, he's certainly not going to be, he will not be getting a third term, and he will not run for a third term. The Constitution is crystal clear on that, and that's not going to happen. But I think the caller's question is different. Will he be different from, let's say, a George Bush, who's very quiet in the background in his ex-presidency, and Barack Obama, relatively quiet on occasion coming out? And you've seen past presidents take a very different role. I suspect he will be more active than that.
You don't think it's possible that there would be a change to the Constitution?
No.
You don't think it's possible that he would decline to leave office?
No. In the end, there will be a new president come 2028. I do believe that. I don't know if it's a Republican. I don't know if it's a Democrat, but it will not be Donald Trump. Now, I'll say this. I have a track record for being wrong, so I wouldn't go bet on that. But that is my view.
Okay. I do want to ask you about the election cycle that we just went through and what you think it portends for the next, for the midterms, whether you think that this is a strong position in terms of people's, desire for a more divided government or kind of a two-sided government.
I think the recent elections highlight something that I hope that I think Republicans need to be paying attention to, and that is that come November of 2026 and those midterm elections, I think it's a stiff wind against the Republicans. It is a very much an uphill battle for the Republicans in the House. The Senate has thought to be unreachable, but that may even be in play too. Not so much because of these elections, but because of where we are. Several things. One is for the incumbent president, the midterm elections historically have always been a challenge. You can remember Barack Obama's famous line of, we really took a shellacking when he lost 63 seats in the House in one of those midterm elections. So history is not on the side of Donald Trump. A second thing is the approval rating. And Donald Trump's approval rating has been sinking on many areas, in some areas in which he had some strong areas. And of course, on the economy, which is the third part of this. It's the history, it's the approval ratings, and it's the economy. As James Carville once said, it's about the economy, stupid. That really actually hasn't changed. And so I do think for those midterms, and these elections did highlight it. And it wasn't just because there were Democratic victories, because in high-profile races, because there were in Virginia, in New York, the referendum in California. But all of those were blue, either states or cities like New York City. But it was broader than that. You saw it in state elections in Mississippi. You saw it in Georgia.
Yeah.
And the margins were large. And if you look at the demographics and the crosstabs, you can see that those who had voted in 2024 for President Trump had turned blue on Democrat. So the warning signs are there for Republicans. But get ready. You need to address health care. You need to address affordability. And you need to address the fact that, quite frankly, come the midterms, it's advantaged Democrats.
That is, as you say, though, a lot of that depended on the economy, and that is so uncertain. It doesn't seem to be trending in a great direction unless you're heavily invested in the stock market, in which case you're doing okay, or you're developing AI, in which case you're a billionaire. But, for a lot of people, the economy hasn't been great, and this president's policies haven't done much so far to ameliorate that.
It's really, really hard. And this is one where President Biden made the mistake of pointing to data instead of understanding what Americans were feeling because of the challenges they were facing with inflation. And President Trump, over the last couple of weeks, looks like he's starting to pivot a little bit, making the exact same mistake, in which he wants to point to data. Hey, look at falling gas prices, look at falling egg prices. And people are saying, well, you can talk about that all you want, but I don't feel very good. Can't buy a home, can't go to the grocery store, healthcare costs are up. And so you got to pay attention to what is on people's minds. And what the new label has become affordability. It used to be simply inflation, but in the end, it's the high cost and high prices that everyday Americans are facing that is the number one issue for most Americans.
Tariffs are a part of this too, right? He's now talking about, rolling back coffee prices. That's also one of those things, sort of like air travel, coffee costs can really hit the pocketbook.
Tariffs are a very big part of this conversation, and that's why take a look at where this economy is come next summer in particular. And I think that will be an important part of the analysis of what the midterm elections look like. If the elections were now, it would be I think it would be a landslide on the Democratic side. They're still a long way off. But you go to next summer, take a look where that economy is, and tariffs are a big part of that. The truth is, there aren't that many levers that you have to really try to, when we're talking about prices and having them come down. So it's a challenge. One of them is energy, and the president is correct that energy prices can affect prices. Tariffs, that's sort of a policy decision that he's felt strongly about for a long, long time. But in the views of many, that is a tax is what that is, and that typically is inflationary.
Are those cost conversations going to drive policymakers to actually really consider the health, the extension of the healthcare subsidies? Because that is a cost that's coming due for a lot of people very soon.
Well, one of the things remember the Affordable Care Act, called the Affordable Care Act, was really primarily about coverage and less about cost. And we've seen, and if you want to save on cost, you can always cut coverage, but that's really not the way we want to go. We do want health insurance for everybody in this country, but there's different ways to get there. And so I do think on the Republican side, this vote is going to be very, very important because healthcare is such a big part of the budget for most Americans. Mm-hmm. And because of what happened in World War II, we have an employer-based system. When there were wage freezes, people received their health care benefits. And so most people, probably you and me, for example, get their health insurance through their employer. That's where most people get it. Once you leave your employer, when you go out into the marketplace, it is very expensive, very difficult. You're using post-tax dollars instead of pre-tax dollars. This is one of the rising issues that is on the minds of many, many Americans, and it'll be front and center for the midterms next November.
I do just want to get you talking a little bit about the gubernatorial race. We've had a few people on, and we'll continue to have people on who are running for that office. What is your early sense of how that race is shaping up, particularly with an eye to the Republican side?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is the tremendous shift that's occurred in Florida in terms of registrations and the makeup of the voters in Florida. I was general counsel for the city back in 2000. It seems like yesterday, but that was 25 years ago. It's hard to believe. But that was a 500 vote difference between Bush and Gore when we were genuinely a purple state. Florida was a purple state. It's a state that voted for Clinton, for Obama, for Bush, and for Trump. I mean, but take a look what's happened recently. Donald Trump won in 2016 by 1%. In 2020, he won by 3%. And in 2024, he won by 13%. You can ask yourself, did a lot of people change their minds, or was there a change in the composition of the voters? The answer to that is both. But what's really happened is the migration of voters to Florida from blue states has not been Democrats, it's been Republicans. And you've seen about a 600,000 or 700,000 registration advantage for Democrats shift into a 1.4 million registration advantage for Republicans. So to the governor's race, it's advantage Republicans. And so for now, as you look to that race, you're going to have it's a difficult headwind for any Democrat. John Jolly right now is, David Jolly is the leading candidate on the Democratic side so far. Others could get into that race. It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah. And we should say, for people who are following statewide politics, we're going to be having a Democratic Attorney General candidate on tomorrow, Jose Rodriguez. So that will be an interesting conversation. Always an interesting conversation with you, Rick Mullaney. Thanks so much for being on today.
Great being with you, Ann.
All right. Up next, the surfer scientist who continues to shape life at the beaches. We talked to the longtime voice of the Daily Surf Report, Bill Longenecker. Welcome back. Well, for 40 years, my guest was the voice of the daily recorded Sunrise Surf Shop Surf Reports. But he's also a familiar face around town, having been a local runner, a columnist, a cyclist, and a lifelong resident of the beach house he grew up in. Here to
Almost lifelong. I moved there when I was 5.
And you did leave for a year or so, I guess.
Yeah.
Went to California. But anyway, here he is to tell us about his ongoing quest to educate folks at the beach. Is Bill Longenecker. Bill, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. I'm very honored to have a chance to be here and spread this information out, because so many people walk on the beach and don't realize what they're looking at.
Yeah, well, you are doing this and you're spreading out a lot of good information and actual materials here too. But for folks who may not know who you are, I do want to kind of talk a little bit about your history. So you were a longtime columnist for the Shorelines section of the Times-Union back when we had community.
30 years back when we had the newspapers.
Community
30 years
newspapers.
for that, and 10 years for that before I was on Beach Leader.
The Beaches Leader, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're best known kind of for your surf association. So how did you get involved doing the Daily Surf Report for the surf shop?
Back in 1984, Bill Hickson, which was one of the original big surf shops at the beach, said, I need somebody to do the surf report because I'm tired of doing it. You get up every morning and check the surf. You don't want to get paid to do it. And I said, sure. And we had just a simple answering machine with a tape on it. A tape answering machine. And we burned out 4 or 5 of those because I started doing the report at 6:30 in the morning. I figured people would like to know before they go to work or go to school what's going on. And I had it right there at the house. And I just get up in the morning, check the surf, and do the surf report.
Pretty early, right?
Yep.
So what time would you get up and roll out and kind of?
Oh, I'm up by 5:30 or 6 almost every day anyway.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I got started with that. But Bill, of course, the shop wasn't doing very well toward the end of the 80s, and it was all right with him. I went with a 976 number at the same time. I had one in my bedroom and one in my kitchen, and I started making a little bit of money from it, charging 50 cents a phone call, not per minute, but per call. And I had 3 answering machines, so they never got busy signals. That was the problem with Hickson's. One line, one answering machine. And we kind of
You'd sometimes have to tell people to hang up so other people could call in, right? You'd say, the surf's great today.
I did that. Boy, you've really researched this. Yes, during that one hurricane that hit Charleston and went all the way to Charlotte. I think Hugo. I put the 15-second tape on and said, the surf's 8 to 10 feet, hang up so somebody else can call. And the machine just went all day. I could hear it running that was before I started mine. And then I started mine on November 13th, 1989. And it began to churn in some cash. And about then, Hickson's was starting to fade. Bill had sort of lost interest in the business, and he wasn't managing it day to day. And he finally decided he had to close. And I went on, and I kept that going until cell phones and the cameras on the beach began to put me out of business.
Yeah.
When they had cell phones, they couldn't bill on AT&T, Bell South. So I couldn't get paid unless they were calling from a landline with Bell South. So he closed off, and I closed that off, and I've known Dan for years, and I went down to the surf shop and asked Dan if he was interested. He took me on right away until 2 years ago when we decided it was about time to close out.
But you would get hundreds of callers a day and really were very well known, not just for doing the report, but the fact that you were out in it every single day. You would go out there with a thermometer.
Yep.
You pretty much got in the water every single day anyway, didn't you?
Almost. Well, I swim almost every day of the week, year round. And, that's how I knew what the conditions were. I live only a block from the water. I couldn't afford to buy the house I'm in now. I inherited it. And I was always checking the surf anyway. So it was nice getting paid for it. Bill Hickson paid me $50 a month. And I was doing better than that a lot better than that with Dan, but it just got to the point where we weren't getting the volume of calls to justify paying for it.
Yeah. And so it would be conditions, weather, and then if the surf was particularly good, you would kind of tell people
surf alert, fun surf alert, full surf alert, hang up and go surfing kind of thing, which we didn't get very often, unfortunately. But this past weekend when they had that surf contest, it was pitiful. Great contest, really tiny surf.
Yeah, it is not necessarily reliably. So in addition to surfing, you're known as a bit of an endurance athlete generally. I mean, you're a cyclist.
Yeah.
You were a runner for a long time. And when you talk about going out and swimming in the ocean, you're swimming for like an hour or so.
At least,
it's not just
an hour and a half.
Taking
and I wear full wetsuits. I'm too old to be cold. Thanks to Sunrise, I have a nice wetsuit collection, and I stay warm even in the winter.
Yeah, and part of your passion for the beach is sort of what's on the beach, what the beach itself is made of. And so in recent years, you're not doing the surf report, but you have been doing these educational efforts with kids and science classes around, particularly at the beaches.
Yeah, I got started in 1972 when I started in the gifted student program. I invited a friend of mine, Warner Webb, who was a pediatric surgeon. I'd known him informally, gone camping with him, he and his partner, Albert Wilkinson. And I said, Warner, would you come in and operate on a fetal pig for my students? And they were 7th, 8th, and 9th grade students. And he said, sure. And he brought a bundle of instruments in. I sat the pig on the table. He says, this is bigger than some of my patients. And I went, huh? I couldn't, and he did sort of an autopsy. He said, let me show you how we make an esophagus for a baby born without one. I didn't know that would happen. He said, we take a piece of small intestine, insert it through the diaphragm, and sew it up. We're talking about sewing something finer than the wire here, sewing it back up. And I got fascinated by medicine. And he turned me, and when I invited guests, I wanted to do something with the kids, not just talk. Because I can fake it a lot of stuff. I could fake it as an architect if I wanted to fake it. But I wanted to do something for the kids to ask him questions so they didn't have to stand there and, So I asked the guests to come in and do things. And he and his partners came for the next 6 years with my new kids, turned me on to all kinds of people. But anyway, that's kind of what I want to do with my science programs. I want kids to see what is on the beach.
Oh, you're going to have to stay on the mic there. Sorry.
Titanium is a rock. The dark sand on the beach is titanium dioxide. And here it is. This is a rock of titanium, and this is from the mountains. And most people don't realize the mountains along the East Coast were over 10,000 feet tall. And during the last ice age, they got ground down and flushed out onto the beach. And the dark sand strands on the beach are titanium sands. And there are several. This is from a mining operation in Orange Park that's now closed. But these are the minerals that they would find in the sand.
And read those for people who can't
Yeah.
watch
Okay,
our
it's
live stream.
Rutile, zircon, ilmenite, and leucoxene, and a radioactive one called monazite, a rare earth, all mined in Florida from our sands that were deposited thousands of years ago. And in fact, it was Bill Gulliford, the former mayor of Neptune, Atlantic Beach, who told me the names one time in a conversation pointing at the sand. But I didn't pay attention. I didn't realize he was pointing at titanium until I got interested in bicycles. Titanium was the unobtainium frame material.
Right.
He couldn't afford it. So this rock is from Gray's Mountains out in North Georgia, and it represents the rock ground down mine on our beach. And another thing,
I'm going to make you go to the one that you were showing me earlier this morning, the fulgurite?
fulgurites. When lightning strikes the beach, it's about a 3,000-degree bolt of power, and it reforms the sand into fulgurites. These are fulgurites from beaches along the coast of Georgia. I get them from a friend in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
And for people who can't see, they basically form these fragile tubes. Is
Very
that right?
fragile. The largest one ever found was about 12 feet long in Florida, but they crumble. And if I walk on the beach, you can't really tell the white sand from the fulgurite. You crush them. But every time we get lightning, I go looking. Hopefully, I'll find some fulgurite someday.
And then one of the things, just briefly, that you teach the kids is about the titanium, because that's something that you can find in all kinds of things, from toothpaste to Skittles.
Yep. And people don't realize, I pass out a piece of candy to the kids as they come in, and then I say, now this is a science experiment. You do not have to eat it, but you may. And then I ask later, I said, now how many of you have eaten beach sand? And they all raise their hand because they think I'm kidding. I said, well, if you've eaten that piece of candy, you ate something with this rock, titanium dioxide.
Extraordinary.
And I'll go, ooh. And, I want them to learn, the other thing on the beach is calcium carbonate, limestone, coquina.
Oh, yeah.
And there are like 10 ways of looking at the
Bill,
sodium.
we're going to have to leave it there. Why don't you hold up the coquina? Bill Longenecker, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for the work that you're doing and for the students you're teaching.
You're welcome.
All right. Up next, with the Blame on Her boys, we preview the Rita Hayworth classic noir film, Gilda. Here at WJCT Public Media, and we're blessed to be joined by the ultimate purveyor and curator of all things noir, David Luckin. Hey, David.
Hi, Ann. Thanks for inviting me over.
Well, it's so good. I'm glad to have you. It's nice to see your face. What are we listening to there with a little Gilda?
That's actually not Rita Hayworth singing, but Columbia kept that secret for a lot of years. You just heard one of the songs from Gilda. It's a brilliant movie called Gilda, and this is how the censors reacted to it. Hayworth's portrayal was too erotic. Ford's character was too cruel, and the overall atmosphere too adult.
Ooh.
It's a trashy movie, so come on out. It was a hit around the world. But let's skip to the end here first, Ed, in case we run out of time. Help your neighbors, bring a can of non-perishable food, and get a free popcorn when you come to the movie tomorrow night.
Well, I think folks who are watching our live stream can watch. There's a classic scene that Rita Hayworth is known for in this film. What makes this film so iconic? I mean, she's...
I think her entrance, when they say, "Are you decent, Gilda?"
Yeah.
That was such an interesting entrance. But we'd watched her be a singer-dancer. She'd done 2 beautiful movies with Fred Astaire in 41 and 42. Then she did CoverGirl in 1944. And here she's on the dark side. So this is just one of the most iconic film noirs. And it wasn't meant to be. Columbia just wanted to stick her in a new movie and give Glenn Ford something to do after he came back from World War II. They had no idea what an iconic film this would become. It's just one of the top 10.
Glenn Ford is the male star in this film,
Right.
of course, but they were lovers in real life.
And it re-sparked their romance that they'd had years earlier. So that added to the mystery, and all the good tension of the movie was they were off stage doing the same thing they were doing on stage. So
True romance.
It's a really fun movie.
And like noir classics, I mean, it does have all of these elements of, the dark, seedy underbelly of
and the
society.
crisscross, and everyone's nasty in this movie. I will say that. That's what makes it such a great movie. You just love this movie because you just watch these characters and say, "Oh no, this guy's just terrible." and imagine Glenn Ford coming out of World War II and back to Hollywood. That must have been an interesting transition for him personally.
I mean, for everybody kind of making that
to come
readjustment.
back. Clark Gable did the same. Jimmy Stewart. They actually flew missions.
Yeah.
And then came back to Hollywood.
Yeah. What a surreal experience that
Totally.
is. And so to your point, this is an event. I mean, we do Noirvember every year here at WJCT, but this one is with an eye to the fact that there is a food shortage happening. And
Yes.
so this is people who bring a food item will get a free box of popcorn. Also, people that are sustainers get half-price tickets. So it is kind of
Absolutely.
like a win-win for those folks. This is tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night. So we urge you to get out of the shadows, get out of your seedy hotel room, and come on down and see a really trashy film called Gilda from 1946. It's a really good film. I encourage people. In the film noir canon, this is right up there in the top 10.
Yeah. All right. Well, David Luckin, we're glad to have you as our resident noir curator.
Thanks for having me.
Happy Noirvember.
You too. Stay out of the shadows, Ann.
All right. Up next, a glimpse into the creative spaces of more than 70 artists. We'll tell you about the once-a-year open studios at Cork Arts District.
Mayo Clinic, working to solve the unsolvable by using innovations like machine perfusion to help more patients receive life-saving liver, heart, kidney, and lung transplants. More at mayoclinic.org/Florida. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
WJCT Public Media invites you to a special screening of Gilda as we celebrate Noirvember, Wednesday, November 19th. Come out of the shadows and enjoy our cash bar, popcorn, and Gilda.
What did you say to him?
I just told him if a man answers, hang up.
Doors open at 6:30, film screens at 7. Visit WJCT.org/film for tickets.
Scam ads are flooding Facebook, YouTube, and other social media, from miracle cures for medical problems to get-rich-quick schemes.
If you go ahead and click that link, it'll take you to wardshop.p.com. That's shop with 2 P's. I don't think it's legit.
So why are they everywhere? That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
Air traffic controllers are a key part of our country's air travel ecosystem. Why don't we have enough of them? While the government shutdown is over and many air traffic controllers are back to work, the FAA says it needs 3,000 more to meet air travel needs. Not enough controllers means fewer flights and more delays and cancellations. What it means for our safety, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, this weekend provides an annual behind-the-scenes peek at the work and the creative spaces of more than 70 local artists at Cork Arts District. It's their 14th annual Fall Open Studios. The tours are this Saturday and Sunday, and here to tell us about it is Crystal Floyd, artist and studio director at Cork Arts District. Hey, Crystal, thanks for being here.
Hey, Ann, thank you for having me.
Happy fall. Welcome back. I know you are personally coming off of a couple of important exhibits this year for your own work, but this is really a big deal for the arts community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Around
Everybody
Northeast
gets
Florida.
so excited, and the energy around Cork right now is just buzzing, waiting for everyone to come and check it out.
It's like a big party that Cork throws. And, you know, this is a studio that is always full of artistic vibrancy, but it is not always open to the public. And so this really is sort of a special occasion.
Yeah, these are our sanctuaries. So, what we've found out over the years is a lot of the artists, need just peace and quiet to create what they create. And so we love to have people in each year to see what everybody's been up to. And a lot of the times that's where we get to see what everyone's been up to as well.
Oh, interesting.
So the timing doesn't always align. We definitely have a night and a day shift.
Yeah,
So
that's right. The very different rhythms of certain artists, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so for people who haven't been in Cork, this is this warehouse space. It's named for its location at the corner of Roselle and King.
Yep.
But it is a working gallery space, a working creative space.
We have a classroom as well, so a lot of the artists teach, and we have guest artists come in and teach.
Yeah.
This year we have a show of UNF Art Guild students who have put on a student show, and it's juried, and they're very excited to take place at Cork. And
Yeah, they must be thrilled. I mean,
yeah, they're excited, and it's going to be, one of the first times that they have a show in front of the general public, and not just the invitees to the college, So I'm happy for them, and we're happy to partner with UNF on that.
were the Cork artists involved in the jurying portion of that?
Yeah, a couple of us are, and Marissa Yao is a instructor out there, and she's kind of spearheaded that project for them.
Yeah. And so this is a day where people, as we said, you can kind of wander the
It's
space.
self-guided.
Self-guided. And
Yeah.
it is a really cool space in and of itself,
Mhm.
but also adorned with all this amazing artwork. And so you can see some of the artists at work. Are people encouraged to engage with the artists?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's a time where you can kind of go around and watch people working or doing demonstrations, talk to them about their practice. All kinds of experiences can come from that, and partnerships and
And it's
collaboration.
it's also an opportunity if people are interested in working with an artist, buying their art. Like this is a great way to start
Yeah,
that conversation.
everything's for sale,
Yeah.
and they're happy to do commission. So if you wanted to kind of shop around and see who might be a good fit for a commission or a project that you have in mind, it's an excellent opportunity to do so.
It is also this year has some kids components. Can you tell us about that? Because kids do come to this event anyway, but there's something sort of for them.
So we've been happy to partner with Go Create, Sunny Myers, to do our kids camps at Cork. So we thought this would be a fun way to incorporate her and everything she does for us. So she's setting up a kids activity, a table for, the kids to have something to do while they're there.
Yeah. And I think it's safe to say that Cork has been really central, instrumental in helping that area revitalize. And so there are a lot of local businesses that have sprung up and also are part of this weekend event.
Yeah, I really give credit to the breweries over there for like pioneering that area.
Yeah.
Bold City and Kingmaker are kind of, the staples in the area, and Solon Coffee has popped up. So we have some surrounding businesses. There's 4 other satellite locations: the Yellow House, Burn Bright Studios, Rick Weller Studios, and Fight Club Gallery.
Okay.
And then Cool Stuff Vintage across the street from us is a really fun store, and they're going to have live music all day. We have a DJ in our courtyard, so that's going to be great. We've paired with Jack's Mutual Aid to have a food drive as well, so we'll be a drop-off location for that for non-perishable items. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and there's also a little local box that's outside the Buckland House, which is not too far away, and that features some stuff from the artists at Cork. Is that right? Kind of a swap center.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I used to work for Riverside Avondale Preservation, so we were happy to partner up, and I had some of the artists at Cork who were willing to donate graciously to the little local box. So starting today, there will be some art from Cork artists, Karen Kirky, myself, Kim Collier, Ricky Redshaw, and Danielle Hilo, and Jamie Ceramics. So.
And these are little treasures, and that people are encouraged to take, but to leave as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and
it's like
right down the street on Herschel Street. So it's a great neighborhood partnership.
Awesome. Well, it is the Cork Arts District 14th Annual Open Studios, Fall Open Studios. It's Saturday and Sunday, the 22nd and 23rd, both days from noon to 6 p.m. Crystal, Floyd, great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. And that is our program. Thanks for listening. If you missed anything, you can find our past and current shows at firstcoastconnect.org. And while you're there, you can sign up to get daily news about the show, including a breakdown of upcoming guests and topics delivered to your inbox each weekday. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett. Our associate producer is Isabella Casapow. Our show is directed by Brady Corum, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us tomorrow when we ask candidate for State Attorney General Jose Javier Rodriguez why he wants to be Florida's top cop. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The Women's Board, benefiting Wolfson Children's Hospital, presents the 2025 First Coast Design Show, December 5th through 7th at the Prime Osborne Convention Center. Opening night gala, lectures by renowned designers, and a children's fashion show. Learn more, firstcoastdesignshow.com.